Hello, everyone. This is Professor Smith, and I'm going to be talking about the writing process. So, we'll be talking about the different parts of the process, including pre-writing, revising, and composing. Sorry, other way around. Pre-writing, composing, and then revising. We're going to be discussing also purpose and audience. And when I say audience, we're talking about who exactly is going to be our target audience for whatever we're writing. Is it going to be children? Is it going to be adults? Are they part of a specific demographic or a specific location? When I discuss purpose, what exactly is the purpose of what I'm writing? Is it to educate or inform? Is it to persuade someone or argue a specific point? Or is it to entertain? So first of all, let's discuss the writing process. I have a small picture here of an iceberg. So we have on top what the reader can see and what the reader can't see. Basically, whenever we create a piece of writing, we give it to an audience. Usually the only thing that they can see is the final draft. Any published book that you might see, any pamphlet or poster that you see, any movie, let's say a movie that you're watching, or let's say a video essay that you decide to watch, or a podcast that you listen to, you're usually only going to get that final draft. What you're not going to see is you're not going to see any discussions that these people had while they were planning on creating this thing, whether they were creating it by themselves or with others. You don't see that discussion usually. You might not see all the pre-writing and notes that that person was creating to create something. Outlining. Let's say that you create a paper and you give it to your instructor. Chances are, maybe even past papers, you might have done some kind of an outline before you wrote the paper. Your teacher might not ever see that outline. You might have created a rough draft, a book that you love, maybe a book that you have loved since you were a child, probably had many revisions until you actually saw that final draft from your author. You probably have never been able to see all the edits of that, of what it looked like originally or any changes that were made. You won't see any feedback given to that author about what they need to change. You second drafts, revisions, more edits, more feedback, edit, revision. Again, all of these different things are not really seen by the reader. It's like it's like an iceberg and how most of it is underwater. You just don't see all the things that are done before a final draft, which means there's actually a lot of work that sometimes goes into creating a fully polished final draft of an assignment, of a book, of a podcast, of a TV show, of a movie. There's so many different things that happen behind the scenes. And when you are writing a paper, in order to create that really good final draft, you do have to do a lot of things behind the scenes, basically, before you actually produce that final draft. Here are some interacting parts of writing. So let's take a look at the process again. Pre-writing, composing, and revising. The pre-writing is kind of like the planning that we do before we actually create a paper. It could be talking to someone else about what you might want to write. It could be brainstorming. It could be making a list of things that you might want to write about. Composing, this is actually when you sit down and actually start writing the piece of writing. And then the revision process. This is when we kind of look at what we have created and we go through it and make changes. Some of this revising process could be you getting feedback from someone else. It could be you listening to a text-to-speech tool to hear your writing being read out loud, so you know what to change. It could be you reading the paper out loud. And sometimes you might actually go back and forth between composing and revising. For interacting components of writing, we have the writer, you. We have the reader. In this case, this semester is probably going to be me, but it might be, let's say, a friend that you get feedback from, or maybe someone in your family. It could be a tutor that you're working with this semester. There's the message. This is another component of, so the interacting component of writing is, what exactly is your message? What ideas are you trying to get across to the reader? And then, of course, we have the means. Is this going to be a written paper? Is this going to be something that you say out loud? Is this a speech? And then we have, of course, the purposes of writing. Inform, entertain, and persuade. Usually these are kind of the primary purposes of why we might write something. And sometimes our pieces of writing will have components of all three of these. So inform, entertain, persuade. Sometimes really good papers have a combination of all three of these to really get the reader engaged and paying attention. Let's take a look now a little bit more at the writing process, the three different stages that we discussed. Pre-writing, which is really the rehearsal, exploration, planning, and warming up of your paper. Think about pre-writing almost like getting directions to a location that you don't know. If you decide to just go and try to find this place without directions, it's going to be a little bit difficult to find it, right? So that's really what pre-writing is. It's really your plan to create what it is that you're going to be producing. For example, I think I mentioned before, I like to write stories. So one of the things that I do for each chapter is I actually make a list of things that I want to happen in that specific chapter. And it helps me as I'm composing to remember, oh, I need to include this, I need to include this. Now we have composing. This is when we transform the pre-writing ideas into paragraphs. And this process can be a little bit difficult and a little bit intimidating sometimes, especially if it's about a topic we really, really care about. And one of my suggestions is, where are you sitting when you're doing this? One of the things that I like to do is I have a specific location where I start composing. I actually compose first on a note-taking app. That's actually where I do like a lot of it. And then I transfer it over to a document, or I separate the document that I'm working on into different parts, and then I compose and put all of my writing into those different parts of the page. The revising process. This can also be intimidating because especially if it's about a topic that you really, really care about, and you might be at a stage in your life where when you write something down, you really feel upset if you're told that something needs to change. Here's the thing, most writing is not going to be perfect the first time you write it down. But that's why we have the revising process. The revising process really is here to help you improve on what you've just done. It can get even better. And that's encouraging, really thinking about the idea of, I wrote something good, it can get better than this. This is where you re-examine ideas, edit, or get feedback from someone else, or create a new draft. Now let's think about our reader. Who exactly is our reader when we are writing? This semester, it's really going to be me, but you can't really just think about, oh no, Professor Smith, Amanda is going to be reading this. Really have the idea that your reader this semester is someone, it's a broader idea of maybe multiple people or a specific group of people that will be reading your writing this semester. We try to almost like imagine what our target audience is going to be, or we have a specific maybe person in mind. So for example, whenever I write about technology, and I really want to teach someone about technology, I actually have my my own father in mind. And I think about like all the things that I'm going to have to tell him in order to understand a specific concept. You might have a specific person in mind where you write when you write a specific topic, but the idea is make sure you have a specific audience in mind while you're writing. Who is your reader? Important things for writers to know or predict about the reader are maybe approximate age, interest, knowledge, maybe ethnicity or cultural background, maybe their language, maybe their first language is not English. So one of the things that I might have to think about is how much slang can I include or how many colloquialisms? So colloquialism is like a specific word or phrase that is specifically from a specific location. There's a lot of specifics in there. But you kind of have to think about that if that's who your audience is going to be. And having that person in mind or that idea in mind is going to help you while you're producing that piece of writing. Think about the possible audiences of these books right here. We have the Lorax. We have A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. We have MLA, wow, NFL magazines. You kind of see what's on my mind. MLA is Modern Language Association format. So NFL magazine. We have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And we have The Odyssey from Paragraph to Essay. So the Lorax, think for a moment about the Lorax, or what you're welcome to do right now is pause the video and actually look up each one of these books. All right, did you pause the video and look it up? All right, now let's talk about the books. So the Lorax is a children's book by Dr. Seuss. Chances are the audience for this particular book is children. However, this doesn't mean that only children have to read it. Adults can certainly pick up this book as well. But really the goal or the primary audience that Dr. Seuss was aiming for in the Lorax was children. A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is about I forget his first name. Basically the main character goes to different versions of London in 4 different dimensions. So like everything else is different, but the overall layout of London is kind of the same. And think of like 4 different worlds, but there's 4 different Londons in each one of them. So this book is primarily geared towards young adult. NFL magazine, football fans. This is aiming for football fans, for athletes. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is actually geared towards high school young adults. And so the idea kind of behind Angie Thomas's book, The Hate You Give, it is about police brutality. It is about racism, discrimination. And one of the reasons why she decided to write it as a fiction book for predominantly high school students was to really, help high school students understand some of the issues that is around this topic. And she felt maybe one of the good ways of doing that was to write this book. So audience for that book, high school or young adults. Odyssey from Paragraph to Essay, this is a college textbook. So the audience of this is college students. So that's really the target audience of that book. Now let's discuss purposes of writing. To educate, to convince, so to amuse, excite, keep emotionally interested. So these really are the primary purposes of writing. Again, inform to educate, persuade to convince, entertain to amuse, excite, or keep emotionally interested. Now, just to talk a little bit about entertain does not mean to make you laugh. It also can still be entertaining even if you personally are not entertained by the subject. For example, years and years ago, I picked up the book The Hunger Games, and I wanted to see why so many people were interested in the book. And I started reading it, and I couldn't put it down. But I wasn't really having fun while I was reading it. I really wanted to know what happened next. I was kind of, the expression on the edge of your seat. Well, I was. And emotionally, it was a roller coaster, because there was just a lot of bad things happening throughout the book. But I wanted to know what happened next. So in this sense, it was entertaining. I wanted to know what happened next. I felt like I was close to the main character. I was in, the book was helping me get put into her shoes as she was going through this experience. But either way, entertain does not mean to make someone laugh. Now, let's take a look at these books again. So The Lorax by Dr. Seuss, A Darker Shade of Magic, NFL Magazine, The Hate You Give, and Honesty from Paragraph to Essay. What you're welcome to do right now is actually pause the video and brainstorm a bit about what you think the purposes of these books are. All right, are you ready? Let's talk about them. The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. So this is a book specifically discussing environmentalism and keeping nature safe. So remember, in this particular book, we have the trees that have been cut down. And the message really is, save the trees, keep them alive, because if you get rid of them, they're not really coming back, especially this particular tree that's featured in the book. It takes forever for these trees to come back. So this is a fiction book, so the primary purpose can be entertain, but a really close second is actually persuade. This book is trying to persuade people that environmentalism is important, specifically convincing children that the idea of environmentalism is important. So hopefully, as adults, they feel like this topic is important. A Darker Shade of Magic. This is entertain. So that is the primary purpose of this particular book. There are many, many different topics in this book that actually are connected to social issues as well. So it could be maybe a little bit of persuade, but really the predominant purpose of this book really is entertain. NFL Magazine. It could be a combo. It could be informed, because we're being informed about different topics connected to NFL. But we also have entertain as, probably both might be standing on the same level ground together. We have entertain and we also have inform in this. And maybe a little bit of persuade, depending upon the topics of the articles that are in here. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Entertain is the primary purpose because it's fiction. However, remember the reason why Angie Thomas wrote this book. It was really to discuss the topics, the social issue topics of police brutality, of gangs, of discrimination, of that feeling of not being able to really fit in anywhere, because the different spaces that you are part of make you almost feel like your person is cut in half, almost like you don't really belong in any of the groups that you're with. And that's kind of what Star Carter kind of experiences throughout this specific book, is that idea that she really doesn't belong in some of the groups that she's part of. Like, parts of her belong in those groups, but not all of her belongs in those groups, because she feels ostracized and kind of distanced or discriminated against in some of the groups that she's part of. So this particular book, again, entertain, but persuade is definitely a big part of this. And so is inform. Again, informing us about these issues and also kind of persuading us about like the importance of a lot of these issues. Odyssey from Paragraph to Essay. This particular book is inform. Definitely inform is the main purpose of this particular book, is to educate us about writing. It might be a little bit of persuade because the book is also persuading us about the different things we need to do when we are writing. For example, using pre-writing, and also, like, what is the purpose of writing? But basically, that's kind of what this book is really focused on. Inform, also a bit of persuade, a little bit of entertain throughout the book with some of the stories that are in here. All right. So take a moment to read through these scenarios. So these are different descriptions of different books or papers. I'm going to read them, and then I'm also going to tell you what the primary purpose of each one. But again, pause the video, take a moment to see which ones you think are inform, which one you think is persuade, and which one you think is entertain. All right, are you ready? 1. A how-to paper that shows the reader the steps to demolish and cut sheetrock. This is inform. This is to educate the reader about how to cut and demolish sheetrock. So sheetrock is like plaster, so like on the wall. 2. A paper that tries to convince the reader to visit a specific gas station to pump gas and get groceries. This is persuade. It's trying to persuade the reader to go to a specific gas station. 3. A narrative paper about someone's first job as a clown. This might be a little bit challenging. It depends on how the paper is written. This could definitely be entertain, but this can also be inform. I have heard on several occasions that this job is really tough, actually. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So probably a paper like this might be a combo of entertain and also inform. 4, argumentative paper convincing coworkers to ask for a raise. This is persuade. This particular paper or piece of writing is trying to talk about why, the coworkers need a raise. So this is persuade. 5, a paper explaining the adverse effects of cigarette smoking. This is actually inform. If we're just focusing on the negative effects without saying you should stop smoking, this is actually just going to be a paper that just informs the reader about the risks. Now, if I started talking about this is the reason why people should not smoke, then I've made it into a persuasive paper. But if I'm just focusing on the effects, the negative effects, that is to educate and inform. Writing routine, this is actually a discussion that either you are having in class or you are going to be doing on the discussion boards. Writing routine. A writing routine is basically the different steps that you take in order to write something. And your goal is to either discuss with a partner, or if you're doing it on the discussion board, discuss what your writing routine is. Also think about what changes that you might make to the writing routine that you currently have. So I'm going to be focusing right now specifically on the first stage of the writing process. What I encourage you to do right now is actually take out a notebook or take out your tablet or phone and maybe try out some of these pre-writing techniques. So pre-writing, this is the first stage. This helps you do some of the following. It helps you generate ideas. It helps you explore possible main ideas. It helps you plan ahead by creating an outline of what you'll write. It helps you practice writing different parts of the actual paper. It might help you figure out if you know enough about the subject. It might help you figure out if you need more information to support your topic. And it might help you create a goal for your piece of writing. This one, the figuring out whether or not you know enough about the topic, this one's really important because let's say you choose a topic and as you start writing, you realize you just don't know enough about the topic. But this is basically when you need to realize, oh, now I need to do some more research on this. It's okay to write about a topic that you're not 100% knowledgeable about. But if you do that, you will need to do research. But part of the process is writing down the things that you do know. I'm going to be sharing a few different techniques. I don't use all of these techniques, but you might like one or two of them. Brainstorming. This is really just a grocery list of things that you want to write about. I do this when I write chapters. So here's an example of a brainstorm. Let's say that your teacher wanted you to write about a time where you had to have courage. Maybe it's doing something new, helping someone in a scary situation, keeping people calm even if you're not. And the reason why I wrote down tornado in North Carolina is because I experienced a tornado in North Carolina. And I had to keep everybody else calm, even though I knew just how dangerous the situation was. Taking a risk on a new job by asking to leave an old one. Firefighting, police, teaching, stage fright, singing, and the list could keep going on. Basically, the idea is this was just, I did this, I think, in 5 minutes. Really just a list of things that I might want to write about if someone asked me to write about courage. And you can do the same thing for any writing assignment you're asked to do, not just in English class, but your other classes as well. Clustering. This is where we use circles to write down our major and then minor and then like major supporting details and our main idea. So let's say it's like types of dogs. So in the center, I wrote dog. And then around that, I've written types of dogs. So maybe each one of my paragraphs is going to be about a specific type of breed of dog. And maybe minor details of those paragraphs or circles in this case are going to be like the different traits of the dog, the different maybe reasons why they were bred in the first place, maybe their jobs that they were kind of designated for when they were bred. So that's kind of something that you could do with clustering. Branching. This is similar to clustering, but it flows from left to right. So over here, maybe your teacher asks you, oh, write about a memory. So right over here, I said memory, and then I kept going and said childhood Christmas, playing the piano. So these are things that I did. Then driving through the snow. Idea mapping. This so this was done with the wonderful Microsoft Office Paint. Yeah. So idea mapping is when you doodle. If you love to doodle, I recommend this one for you. If you spend 2 hours on a doodle, this is not for you. A doodle for idea mapping really should only take you a few seconds, not an hour. And really the purpose of this is to get your ideas going. So over here I have people used to think that stars were not suns. Research this. Then I have some person yelling taxes. So maybe I'm going to write a paper about the history of taxes and when taxation started in the world. And I made a picture of a cat. Are cats the most popular pet on earth? Find out. How many groceries do we toss each year? And then I have a lovely picture of a truck. Another type of pre-writing technique you can use is maintaining a journal. Maintain a journal about what happens in your life. Some of these things that you write about could be turned into a paper. It could be ideas and opinions, advice, interesting facts, life experience, a different point of view than other people. Basically, a journal can help you think of things that you are concerned about. Remember, during the semester, you are going to be writing a paper about a social issue of concern to you. So, keeping a journal could actually help you with that. Maybe one of the things that pops up in your journal, maybe you already journal, is maybe one of the topics that comes up over and over and over again are about topics that are really connected to social issues. And when we say social issue, we're specifically talking about issues or problems or concerns that change the way people live or change the way anyone lives or changes the way our planet works. Um, and these are, issues that can be addressed or discussed or researched. And maybe, hopefully, you will use some of the knowledge that you discover from that project to talk about it, to do research about it, to maybe make a change in our world. Who knows? Response journal. So this is very similar to just a regular journal that you keep day to day. A response journal really is where you pick a topic and you write about it. So a topic specifically related to maybe something you've seen, a specific day you had, a concern you have, a problem that you have discovered. You can also use it for day-to-day events, but again, one of the things that I do is if something big comes up in my life, I write about it. You can also do this when you're looking at the news as well. So it could be like a journal that you keep in response to current events. Some people do this. Sometimes this is a really good way to kind of take all the thoughts that are in here and all your concerns and put them onto a piece of paper to kind of what we call immortalize it. You can look at this response journal later, years and years from now, and kind of see what thoughts you were thinking of, in that specific moment. That's why journals can be really interesting tools to use as a writer. I don't use them as much as I think I should. But this is definitely something that you could do. All right. So that is my discussion of the writing process. Remember, there's several parts to it. Again, we have pre-writing, we have composing, we have revising. And we also have thinking about who our audience is and what our purpose of writing is. All right, everybody have a good day. Bye.